Welcome back to Pull Up with Miles and Owen. This is episode 66. We're actually dropping two in a week for once. That's pretty rare for us. We spoke to Tosh Cloud a couple of days ago, which was awesome. And today we have on one of our favorite reporters in this space. And she's newer in this space than some of the other people we've had on before, but does such a great job covering the league holistically. She covers the league for SB Nation and now has this new video venture, WNBA Today, with CLNS Media, which is really putting out strong, consistent WNBA content across the league. Multiple videos a day is just super intimidating to us, but it's awesome. And also does a lot of Celtic stuff, but with our baseball teams currently matched up head to head in the playoffs, we're not going to show Boston too much love here. I'm sorry. But Noah Dalzell, thank you so much for joining.
I didn't realize that I'm coming on right after Natasha Cloud. That's enormous shoes to follow. That was great. That
No
was great
pressure.
content. So
No pressure.
maybe I would have said, let's grab a couple other like random media members in between us if I realized.
You're more than capable, and we are so happy to have you on. And you and I share a little bit of a connection because I went to college in Boston. I worked in Boston sports for a little while. And I think your story of how you got into the WNBA and just journalism in general is so cool. So for our listeners, could you share how you're here?
Yeah, so I grew up playing basketball. I always like to preface like I was obsessed with basketball, but I wasn't that good at it. So it kind of makes sense that like I'm here talking, writing, going to basketball games is my job because I was always holding on a little too hard for something that I wasn't that good at. But I realized at a young age that I really loved to talk and write about basketball, like into an unhealthy degree almost. And I had a Celtics website when I was a kid. I was applying for jobs at Bleacher Report and like other companies when I was literally in middle school. And in hindsight, like I can only imagine the hiring managers like waste of time that I was sending in applications where I was like, I haven't gone to high school yet, but like I'm qualified. So I actually studied political science and I was in, got a master's in public policy. I was lobbying, I was in government. I was working in environmental policy. Like I did not think that this whole dream of like talking and writing about sports was ever going to actually happen. And then a couple years ago, I applied to do like basically write for Celtics blog as like a very sporadic contributor, basically unpaid, like super low key commitment. And one thing led to another, and that was kind of my foot into like this whole world of writing about sports professionally. And it started with the Celtics, but then from there, I think I realized like how much more coverage, how much more saturated the NBA media landscape was, and how the WNBA was having like all these incredible games. And then like I was trying to read about those games and read about those players, and there was like so much less out there about kind of the whole league at large. And so we don't have a team in Boston. That's something that I hope eventually changes. But it's been really, really fun to kind of dive into this league for the past two seasons as well. So yeah, it definitely wasn't if you had told me like 3 years ago, this is where I would be today, I would have said it was impossible and I didn't have any plans to land here, but I wouldn't change a thing.
Something that I really love about your style of reporting is the relationship building that you do. And I think we do see that more on the NBA side because, like you just said, there isn't a team in Boston, so it's harder to have that. But you talked about the importance of going to some of these community events. And on one hand, there's the access of it because fewer reporters, especially independent space or smaller platforms, are going to have the access when you're at practices or at games that some of the
Right.
larger websites or businesses or companies will. So like it really is a great opportunity to get some of that one-on-one time that's really hard to find otherwise. But how has that helped you in building those relationships with players and in also your storytelling as well?
Yeah. So my thinking is that, like, for example, I was at Celtics practice today, and there was probably 30 of us, and we all saw the same two interviews. There's probably going to be 35 stories about Anthony Simon's defense because that's what we talked to him about today. And it's kind of like, yes, I can write one so that my site can have one too. But like, am I really pushing the needle here? Am I really telling a story that the readers are not going to find elsewhere? Like, you're not for the most part. And so that doesn't mean you don't go to practice. Like, you guys know, being on a beat, like, you go to all those things and you form those relationships. And sometimes it's more meaningful than other times. But that's not where I feel like I can really story tell. And I definitely can't build relationships there either when I'm barely even in the scrum, like everybody's, phone and recorders are in there. So I think when I started, I thought, for one, it's an opportunity to like not be like in this massive crowd of reporters and like maybe to have like some space to breathe because it's a massive media market here. We have TV stations, bloggers, newspapers, radio stations, like the list goes on. But then once I got there, I was also like, okay, there are actually really cool stories here because how many questions can you ask a guy about how he's has a bad defensive rating? Like not that many at a certain point. Like the guy, like I would go crazy if somebody asked me more than two questions about that topic. But a player that does a lot of stuff off the court is Jaylen Brown. I've gone to a lot of his events over the summer. He has an educational camp that he runs, and he launched a fashion company and a shoe company, and he's going to surprise kids at schools in Boston and like just doing a million things. And each of those things is its own story that's probably not going to get written if I don't go because there's not 30 reporters showing up. And so there's the side of it that's like I can go find unique angles and I can kind of story tell to fans also that these are not just athletes that are on their betting lines, but they're also people that have interests and relationships and humanity. And I think that it's kind of like I hate to say like humanize the players because they should be humanized, but I think sometimes that gets forgotten in all the money and the fame of it all. So that part I enjoy as well. And then the other piece is like I feel like as reporters, we're always asking things of the players. We're asking them for a quote, we're asking them for their time, we're asking them for whatever it is. And so it's nice to be able to go to their thing and to actually be like, hey, I'll tell your story. Like, I don't really need anything from you today. I'm just gonna like sit in and watch, or I'm gonna take some photos of this like really cool thing you're doing. So it's a way to like neutralize, I think, the fact that it is a little bit of a take relationship between the media and the athletes.
I love that. And sorry to cut you off here, but like I I think a lot about the kind of quote aggregation nature of what we're seeing at the practices that you were talking about when you get into those scrums that are like 15, 20 people deep and it's just a race to see who can tweet the fastest and who can then grab the quotes from other people's stories. But do you have a favorite of these off the court events that you've covered or something that either was meaningful to you or you could tell was especially meaningful to one of the athletes?
Yeah, I would say maybe this is a little bit of recency bias, but over the summer, Jaylen Brown hosts this bridge camp where it's for kids. It's what's cool about it is not just like a lot of times I feel like these kinds of camps it's for like the kids that are the smartest, but maybe they're not in the best like school district, but they do really well in testing, so it's like they deserve more opportunities. He took like an opposite approach where it's like it's actually just about like who has shown like kindness and like leadership and community, and it doesn't really matter how like academically gifted those students were. And it's this really cool week-long camp. And I've been reading about it for years because every year he posts on his Instagram that he did it again. And I'm like, what's it actually like? Like I kind of want to go. And obviously, like usually when I go to stuff, I'm taking a million photos and I'm tweeting and everything. And I like pitched it to his people, like, like I really want to go. Like I'll stay out of the way. They won't even notice that I'm there. And I'll just like tell this story and I'll do so in a way where I'm not like invading the privacy of any of the students or anything. And I was able to shadow him for like a week, which you guys know for, this is on the W side as well. Like you don't usually get that much access to a player, and especially certainly a player of his fame, finals MVP, Celtic superstar. Like he's usually like inaccessible even at practice. We don't even really hear from him that often at practice and shoot around. So that was really cool to get to know him as a person and then to be able to see like, okay, here's this endeavor that I'd only ever known as like a buzzword of like, okay, he runs bridge camp. Like, what is it actually, right? And get to talk to the students, get to talk to the people that he works with, and tell that story. So I did that over the summer. That was one of my favorite projects that I've done. And part of it was just like the pace of being able to come in every day and just sit there for 8 hours and not feel like I need to have a story at the end of the day where I feel like the grind of the journalism industry. Sometimes it's like, okay, like I need a game recap. I need a post game recap. I need shoot around. Like, what do they say? I'm going to write that up. And because it was the off season and this was like something that I had envisioned as like a longer term project, I was able to take my time with it. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed that one. And also I'm like a nerd at heart who loves to learn about like social issues and all that. And so I was like, at some points I was forgetting that I was there as a reporter and I was about to like raise my hand and ask questions of the lecturers.
That's so cool. I love that. And I think that's like a huge part of reporting too, is like that goes such a long way in building relationships with these athletes who you're covering and kind of breaking. We're always talking about how stilted the relationship can get between players and media. And if a player sees you taking an interest in caring in something like that, then it just goes a long way in just being two people who go to work together at, shoot around or whatever it is, which I think is cool. And also, you're downplaying your role on the Celtics beat too. I know we're here to talk W, but I think it's very, very impressive the way in which you kind of are able to like connect with fans online and get a temperature of the fan base and what people want to read about. And you've done such an exceptional job of that in the W space too. How do you approach reaching out to fans and your readers and kind of getting a pulse of like what the people want to read about and hear about?
Yeah. So one of the interesting things is because I didn't go to journalism school, I feel like I do things in a different way sometimes, which I usually check in with my journalism school friends to be like, it's cool that I'm doing it like this. Like hopefully it's not too out of left field. But I think ultimately like we are writing for an audience and they are like almost like our customers, right? Like I don't write for any paywalled site, which I love because I love that everybody can access it. But at the same time, it's like if nobody reads my articles, it's like nobody's buying what I'm selling, even though it's free in this case. So I'm always asking fans what they want. I'll ask on social media. I'll say, what do you guys like before media days or before the finals last year in the WNBA? Like, what do you guys want to know about? Are there players you're interested in? Are there people you want to see profiled? And if everybody responds one person, it's like, okay, I'll go do that. Like they know better than, somebody sitting in a newsroom 4 degrees removed from me that has never actually watched the beat that I'm on, right? Like that I think ends up happening sometimes. And so the fans sometimes are more well equipped to talk about these teams and to write about these teams than the people that are assigning, assignments in a lot of big newsrooms because they're literally consuming every piece of content, watching every single game, studying these players on their social medias. Like they know everything. So I can't just regurgitate the things that they already know. So I actually think they're really good pulse, temperature check. That being said, like I've gotten some crazy suggestions that I have to use my own better judgment. So I'm not going to always just ask a question because a fan suggested it. But I do usually kind of like use that as a feedback loop, which can get a little bit challenging because as you guys know, social media can be a little bit toxic or a lot toxic. And so you don't want to start to like view everything that people are saying to you as like people in your life are saying this to you. Like there is a level of separation, but when it comes to brainstorming, like I'm very open to using Reddit, using different, WNBA forums, Celtics forums, seeing what other reporters have covered. Like if another reporter has already profiled the player that I wanted to profile, like unless I have something unique to add, like I'll pick somebody else. So I'm always consuming media. I listen to basketball podcasts literally 14 hours a day. I read every article that everybody writes. Like that helps too, I think.
I think that's such a healthy journalistic approach. And as someone who went to journalism school, that like the stuffy journalism school, that it's so overrated. Like I think this is a way better way to do journalism because you're right. It's like you fall out of touch if you're just listening to one person who might have like a tertiary relationship to the WNBA, but they don't even really know what's going on. And then
Yeah.
it's all about the clicks and et cetera. So I think that's really cool. We have actual WNBA basketball to talk about, which yeah, our listeners are like, we got the WNBA finals. What are you guys doing here? But we wanted to talk about your journey first. And now we're here and we have the Phoenix Mercury and the Las Vegas Aces, a matchup I'm extremely excited about. General thoughts and feelings heading into this one, because I don't think a lot of people predicted that this was going to be the finals. And we've got our first best of seven. And I can't wait. Where are you at with it?
I'm so excited. I don't know that there's any matchup I wouldn't be excited for at this point, so I have to put that as a disclaimer. But these playoffs have been awesome, and I think that people are gonna knock the Aces a little bit because it feels like they played two inferior teams, and it was like a struggle to get here. But hey, you make the finals, you make the finals. The Mercury have done it in the most resounding fashion, where they beat both of last year's finals teams. And again, like you don't pick your path, so you can only beat the team that's in front of you, but I think this is going to be a matchup that features like some of the best players in the game right now. It's going to be super physical. And honestly, like as somebody who covered Alyssa Thomas on the Sun last year, I'm particularly intrigued to see her back in this stage because we kind of know what to expect from Asia Wilson and Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray and like this group. Like, yes, the pieces around them have changed, but this Aces team has been here before. This Mercury team is like this is like almost like an expansion team. The way that these are all brand new faces that have been clobbered together, and the fact that they're here and that who they've beat to get here is super impressive. So I don't know if it's too early to say my prediction. I have the Mercury winning in seven. I tweeted it out like the second the buzzer sounded yesterday for nobody asked. I was just like, I have my thoughts. So I'm gonna put it out there and get some hate from all sides for this. But yeah, that's my prediction. But again, when you pick something in seven, it's like it could go either way. And I think it'll go down to the wire the way this entire postseason has.
Yeah, I think that that's a great point. And I want to get into some of the individual matchups, but before we do that, let's talk about how great this playoffs has been already because
Yeah.
it's been one of the most thrilling combination of series that we've ever seen in the WNBA. And every year, it's just the competition is leveling up and up and up, and these storylines are deepening. What have been a couple of the moments that have really stuck with you from these first two rounds?
I don't know how you pick a couple. I mean, again, recency bias, but I think this Fever Aces series was so entertaining. Like, my inherent nature is to always root for the underdog. Like, it literally doesn't matter. Like, I'll start rooting against like my childhood favorite teams once there's an underdog component. Like, it's just seeing the way players like Odyssey Sims and Shea Petty and players that were literally sitting at home a few months ago, like it's so mind-boggling that now most of the WNBA is sitting at home and Odyssey Sims is scoring 4 points in the final minutes against the Aces in a game five in the semifinals with the trip to the finals on the line. Like I had like chills watching that. And I'm not like I don't know Odyssey Sims personally. I've never, I'm not like a Odyssey Sims super fan, but it's like how could you not be moved by that type of performance? So that's one. And then honestly, like I've really loved to see the way Alyssa Thomas and Satu Sabali and Kalia Copper have come together for the Mercury throughout this postseason. And Satu in particular, I think there's a lot of knocks on her game and her inefficiency earlier on in these playoffs. And for her to kind of like, I know she's not doing it to shut the haters up, but like it feels like she kind of has. And anytime you have like a super team assemble on paper, 90% of the time it doesn't turn out to be the way you hope that it will. And like Phoenix on the NBA side is very familiar with that. But this trio has actually come together and been exactly what the Mercury could have hoped for when they had the offseason they had. So I've actually loved watching like them hit their stride. At least it feels that way in the playoffs. And so it's been a lot of great moments, a lot of big shots. Sad about the injuries. That's like the one thing that has been a little bit about a lot of a bummer, I should say. But you kind of expect that at this point, that's kind of a part of the game.
100%. It's staggering to me the number of close games we've had. Like if you went through every one of the playoff games so far, I would venture to say that 75% have been like within 5 points. I might be totally off, but that's what it feels like. And yeah, you're so right. Shout out to Shea Petty, Massachusetts in the house, by the way. And just a
I knew what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, just phenomenal series all the way through for Indiana to battle like that. I mean, we're recording this today on Wednesday. Last night, game five. For them to battle after Kelsey Mitchell goes down in a really worrisome way, and so glad she's recovering. That was so scary. It was awful. And then Aaliyah Boston is in foul trouble and she fouls out. And you've got Bree Turner and, like you said, Odyssey Sims, Shea Petty, Natasha Howard, like Lexi Hull just hitting every mid-range jumper from 14 feet. It's like, how are they still competitive and right here and forcing overtime? It was just like, it was truly inspiring to watch. What makes you lean Mercury in seven? Because I think I'm there with you. And for me, like the point you just made about the big three kind of coming together, especially Satu, who is this player who, as you pointed out, gets knocked for her inefficiency sometimes, has had a pair of bad game ones in the first two rounds, but basically the other five games she's played that weren't the game ones have been phenomenal. Ka is a finals MVP. Alyssa Thomas is a perennial MVP candidate. But this team to me, and it's the reason I also lean Mercury in six or seven, one through eight, it's just contributors. Everyone who comes in, Kat Westfeld comes in, hits some threes. Natasha Mack. I also love what you said about they're almost an expansion team because it really was just Ka and Mack. Like those are the only, there's just an unreal amount of turnover. And yet, Sammy Whitcomb, all these players that come in off the bench, Joanna coming in mid-season, they've just found a really amazing ability to gel. Why do you lean Mercury over Aces, given that the Aces do have the best player in the world?
Yeah, they have the best player in the world and they have home court advantage and they have the better record and they won the regular season matchups where most of the team was available. So like there's a lot of logic to pick the Aces, but sometimes you kind of have to throw that out and just say like, how do both of these teams' playoff runs feel? And I'm convinced by this Mercury playoff run. Yes, Nafisa Collier was hurt in game four. I wish that she wasn't, but regardless of that, they did outplay the Minnesota Lynx in that series, and she said it herself when she had her remarkable, 4 minute, speech at the podium the other day. So I do think that you unseat the defending champs, and the Liberty had their own issues, as you guys know. But at the same time, like that was really impressive to go back from Miss Alyssa Thomas misses a layup in game one, and instead of them being like, "Damn, we just missed our opportunity to go take the lead here," they go back and they win two games. That game two was one of the most like dominant beatdowns of this postseason on the road with their backs against the wall. Like they've just looked and felt like champions to me in these playoffs. And they didn't feel that way during the season at times. The Minnesota Lynx definitely gave that energy. So it doesn't always pan out. But when you look at like championship teams, it's not like they all of a sudden look like the championship team for the first time in the finals. And I don't think the Aces have felt like a championship team in these playoffs. They felt like a very talented team. They've had big players come up huge. I think Chelsea Gray in overtime yesterday is a perfect example of like why experience matters and being on the stage matters. And Asia Wilson has been unreal, and Jackie Young is quietly having like an incredible, insane playoff run that I don't think we're talking about enough. But all that to be said is like they're still barely grinding out these wins, and you can talk about the Aces, and maybe the Aces are an anomaly because they I don't know what this was. This Aces playoff run, it was ridiculous. But Seattle Storm, like what was that? They were one Erica Wheeler jumper away from losing in the first round. So I just feel more convinced by the performance that I'm seeing as a totality from the Phoenix Mercury, and their big three right now feels like the best big three in the world. And Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray and Asia Wilson might make me eat my words in like a week for that. So it's very much possible, but right now that's where my heart leans. Just having like rewatched these games and just seeing the way that they've come together. It feels like the first couple chapters in a documentary of a championship team.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so much that goes into it. And with these teams both having stars leading the way, we've got to think about the attrition that we've seen throughout this playoffs with all of these injuries. And then that has me thinking about the depth. And Owen kind of alluded to it and you responded in kind. But when Asia and Jackie are both putting up 30 pieces, it shouldn't take you to overtime to keep your season going, right? Like when every single three that was hit in overtime by the Aces last night was like, I'm like, oh, that's the dagger, that's the dagger, that's the dagger. And then it almost felt like Indy just wasn't going away. But that whole second half, it almost felt like Vegas was playing with their food a little bit. And that's not something we saw from them in their back-to-back championships. And that's what I would worry about because you talk about the physicality of this Phoenix team. If you are not 100% locked in 100% of the time, they're going to take advantage of that. And the key matchup, obviously we've got two of the best players in the world in Asia and Alyssa Thomas, but how do you think that the two of them kind of embody what their teams are representatively as a whole?
Alyssa Thomas and Sachu Sabali.
No, and Asia Wilson, sorry. 18,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I think both of them are one of the things that I always think about is how the great thing about the WNBA is that players are elite on both ends. And I think that like the best players in the world are also on the all defense team. Like it's something that I actually like think about a lot because I also cover the NBA and it's so not the case there.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like it's gonna come down to who's able to outplay the other. And I think Asia Wilson is much more of like she is the force on her team, and sometimes it's like she goes off for 30, but it's not that her team is a little bit struggling a little bit around her. Whereas Alyssa Thomas, like she'll do it more quietly, and I think she's imposed her will a little bit more in this playoff run than what we're used to seeing. And part of that is that she has the weapons around her that I think many of us have wanted to see have around her for a long time. So like I don't want to dim it down to like it's a one-on-one battle because Asia is probably going to take that one, and historically she has when you look at their regular season matchups and you look at their postseason matchups. But at the same time, like it's about who can engage their supporting cast better. And Alyssa Thomas is the best playmaking, maybe the best playmaker in the WNBA. I was gonna say playmaking big, but
Yeah.
playmaker at the WNBA. And so when you have the tools around her that she has, like that's where I think she has the edge. So they both kind of embody their teams and they both do it on both ends. And Asia's a little bit louder in the way that she does it, but right now it's about like winning games, and it's not obviously Asia Wilson contributes to winning games. She was my MVP vote, but I think Alyssa Thomas has the weapons around her that she can kind of activate, and that's what we've seen her do throughout these playoffs.
Yeah, it's been so fun having watched Alyssa Thomas in her career in Connecticut, where she played with so many great players. But for her to have this amount of shooting surrounding her
Yeah.
has been such a joy this year. It's just like everything she's always deserved as a playmaker. And I also think about that with the defense offense thing. Like you can make a case that Asia Wilson, Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Alyssa Thomas have been the four best players in the league for a long,
Yeah.
long time, and they're the four best offensive and the four best defensive. And maybe that's a teeny bit reductive, and there's other nuances, but it's kind of true, which is staggering and really, really cool.
It's really cool.
It's really cool. In speaking of fee, we kind of wanted to close with the newsiest item. You alluded to it a little bit ago, but on Tuesday, Nafisa Collier did would you even call it an exit interview? It was a prepared statement. What it was spectacular. It was like just so impressive and one of the I think most important things I've seen from a player after a season with looming CBA negotiations in terms of coming out and saying exactly in a very uncompromising fashion, here's where things are at right now. It's not very good. What were your takeaways from that? Were you shocked? I mean, we were together on Tuesday scrolling through Twitter all day. We just released a
It was
podcast. It
insane.
was it was wild. Like, what do you make of it?
Yeah, there's no way to really put it into words, honestly. When I sat down and actually watched the entire remark, I was thinking to myself, like, okay, feel like we just watched the course of WNBA history dramatically change.
Yep.
Because not only the fact that it was Nafisa Collier, who I think was actually the perfect messenger for this, because she's incredibly talented, she's one of the faces of the league, and at the same time, she's very non-controversial and she doesn't do this often. So when she does decide to pick her spots, I think it hits. And she kind of alluded to that as well. Some of the lines that she repeated that Kathy Engelbert had shared with her around the players feeling like the players owe her something for the media rights deal, that Caitlin Clark should be grateful for her offseason endorsements, which is just a blatantly false thing to say as well, considering quite literally her fame came from college basketball. If the NCAA wants to come out and say that, then maybe they have a case to make, but the WNBA does not. So that was striking, but just she revealed a lot, and not just in the way that she did it, and then has all these other WNBA players come back and affirm her. Like this wasn't a loose cannon, right? She speaks for all of them, and that was very obvious, even though she said she speaks for herself. So to be honest with you, like I don't have sourcing on this, so this is just like my gut feeling, but it feels like the end of Kathy Engelbert's tenure as commissioner of this league, which the writing was a little bit on the wall just because you can see that she's not developing the kinds of relationships that normally a commissioner would. Um, and at the same time, a lot of the bigger picture issues around this league, whether that's officiating consistency, the training, why are these G League refs? That's the thing. That's a whole other conversation topic. Like it's a different game, but I think there's a lot of things that you brought to light. The revenue share, like the revenue that the team players don't make, the fact that they're so underpaid. More people now are willing to hear out, like, what is this whole deal of like they're fighting for more money? Because I think the All-Star shirts became controversial in like a negative way for some reason, where now I think for some reason the Visa Collier statement is pushing people in the other direction where they're like, wait a second, like she's onto something. So some of it's kind of hard to understand, like why certain things hit more than others, but she was the right messenger for this. And the message was delivered very intentionally. And then the fact that everybody's backing her up, it does feel like we're watching something really transformative here.
I totally agree. And I feel like there's, like you said, there's a lot of factors at play, but go back to All-Star Weekend. And this has been a through line. This has been building. And that was a moment where we talked to a bunch of players the day after they had that meeting with the league. And that was the first time they sat down and they rolled through something like 40 players deep. And I don't know if we knew in the moment, but we're learning now and we're going to continue to learn how much leagues like Unrivaled have really helped these players grow together and grow closer and become this unified front. Because the 2020 CBA, there were players that said they didn't even read
Yeah.
before they signed it. And now you have this show of force. And it's just it's interesting looking at the WNBA compared to other sports leagues because the difference is, I think, the scale. There are 13 teams now, but way fewer athletes. So these athletes have been for so long championing the growth of this sport. It is so star forward, and they are the ones that are engaging with everybody on Twitter in a way that if you're making $15 million a year in the NFL or something like that, you don't have to be doing that. You don't have to be fighting for your next paycheck, for your next endorsement. That's already coming to you. And these players have so long been just kind of going 1 inch at a time. And now to see them grow together and realize for the first time in the league's almost 30-year history, they have the leverage. They have the numbers. They have the endorsements. They have the secondary opportunities. Playing in the WNBA is a goal and has been a goal for them, but now it's not the only option. And I think that there's a huge disconnect between what Kathy Engelbert is saying and what is the actual reality now. And most commissioners in sports don't have to engage with their players directly, but they do. Like it doesn't have to be sending
Yeah.
me a message when she gets hurt. That just feels like a courtesy that should be really easy. Like that doesn't seem like
And I think it's about what it represents, the absence of that. Is that like, yeah, does it, is it the end of the world if Kathy Engelbert doesn't reach out to Fee after her injury? Like, it's not the end of the world, but it captures what this, it seems to be the relationship between the players where they're kind of viewed as commodities, as replaceable, as they're the ones that should be grateful to be here. And like, in reality, no, like if you think about the NBA, like they're catering everything to the players, right? The players run that. So it's interesting that disconnect, and I think some of those anecdotes have been really interesting too. Of Elena Del Don saying like, yeah, she didn't reach out to me after I retired. Like so many little stories like that collectively painted a really dire picture of the relationship between the players and leadership.
absolutely. And I think like it's fair to say and to remind people because I don't know how many people understand what the relationship of the commissioner is in a sport, but that is someone who is hired to represent the owners and to kind of be that shield in the middle.
Right.
So it's not like that necessarily needs to be part of what her job is, but it's exactly what you said, that these players are seen as commodities, that they're not seen as people, as professional athletes, as just like everything that keeps this sport growing day to day. And yes, I do think that there's a strong case to be made that a lot of what Kathy has done on the business side has helped this growth, but it was predating that, and some of it was inevitable too. It's watching how this country has somewhat shifted, which is somewhat different in a lot of other areas when it comes to, I guess, women in general. But from in the way that the comment sections have changed, has in the way that people have seen the W grow as a legitimate sport, and it doesn't seem like that's something that has connected at all with either Kathy or with the owners or with whatever combination of that comes together. So it's fascinating. We are heading into a very contentious winter. Who knows the next time after these finals we'll see these players on the court in their with their WNBA teams. But that being said, we wanted to, on the way out, give you a chance to talk about WNBA today and what that new venture, what your goals are there, what it's going to look like, where people can go and find and follow you, and just some of everything that kind of went into that.
Yeah, so I've been podcasting and talking about the Celtics on video for a long time, which is nice because I write about the Celtics and then I do the video audio stuff, and I feel like that together paints the picture of like the coverage that I want to have. And on the WNBA side, I've just been writing for the last few years, and so this new channel, which we did launch a little too late, I wish we had started it earlier in the season, but better late than never. We're gonna have regular coverage whenever news breaks, whenever free agency signings, games, reactions. Like it's basically just a space for me to just like share my takes and bring on guests and bring on down the road. We want to bring on players and coaches and media members and things like that. So I think the idea is just for people to have a space of like, okay, this news broke. Like maybe ESPN's not covering it right now in this moment, but I know that I can get something on this channel where we're kind of have short turnarounds and reactions and things like that. So there are some great channels already out there. So I look forward to kind of joining that mix, and it's been a really fun couple of weeks. And for me, it's nice because sometimes I have a take that's like not enough to like write out an entire article that I'm going to defend, but it's like it's enough for like a 10-minute video that I'll just say my thoughts on something. So that's been fun. So yeah, you can go find that on YouTube. It's WNBA Today on CLNS.
Awesome. Thanks so much. We're gonna link that in the show notes and the comments. But Noah, this was awesome, and we threw
Yeah, thanks for having me. You guys have been leaders of this space, so I truly appreciate how long you guys have been covering and how well you guys have been covering the W.
appreciate that. Appreciate you. And I know we're not going to see you for the finals. None of us are traveling for it, but hopefully we see you soon. Let us know if you've come into town for a Knicks Celtics game, and we'll talk about our men's basketball teams for a hot minute.
Sounds good. Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.